Alright, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, Sergio Oliva Jr. posting some physique updates after everything that happened involving this whole car accident thing, him being incarcerated overseas in Dubai. Kind of a setback for his prep, but he posted these physique updates showing what kind of shape he's in. And I thought he actually looked pretty good in some of these updates. Now, I talked to Sergio a little bit, but in these updates, the caption said, if it's meant to be, it'll be. Either way, I'm going to be ready. I'm assuming he's referring to his competition there, because he said he was in prep when he got locked up in Dubai, and that kind of threw a wrench into his plans. So I messaged Sergio, and I asked him, what show are you looking at? What's the plan here? And he says the Arnold Classic South America is the show that he's planning on. And that show is on April 14th, so just about, what, 3 weeks away right now. Maybe a little bit more, 3.5 weeks. But it doesn't sound like the problem for Sergio is whether or not he's going to be ready to compete in the show physique-wise, prep-wise. It seems like there's still some unresolved issues, stemming from this whole situation in Dubai with trying to get his insurance to cover some of the things related to it. I don't know how specific he wants me to get with that, but he did say if insurance doesn't take care of that stuff, he's not going to be able to travel to the show in time to compete, the Brazil show, and he's going to have to figure something else out. Which, I mean, does kind of suck, because right now is kind of a slow period in bodybuilding. The after Arnold Classic lull is like something we go through every year where there's nothing going on for a couple of months. So after the South America show, there's not another show until the New York Pro, which is May 20th. So like a month and a week, so 5 weeks after the Arnold South America. So he'd have to keep prepping for 5 more weeks to do that, which would kind of suck. Then the Cali Pro, it is actually after the New York Pro, the Cali Pro, so it's the week after. You have the Cali Pro on May 27th. Then you got the Toronto Pro in June, and that's when things really start to kick back up, where you got shows all summer of people trying to qualify for the Olympia. And look, I know that Sergio can be a polarizing figure, and some people love him, some people hate him, but I'm actually a big fan of Sergio. I'm a big fan of his physique, and I'm excited to see him come back. And more than any of those things, I'm a big fan of his story. I mean, he is a Mr. Olympia champion son, excelling as a pro bodybuilder. It is a great story, and it's a great thing to follow. But look, I wish him the best. I hope he's able to get these issues squared away. He looks pretty good in these updates, but we can't see the lower body. We can't see the back. It's hard to tell what kind of true shape he's in these pictures that, like I said, we're just over 3 weeks out. So we are close to the show that he's planning on doing. But you can see striations in his shoulders. His abs look all right. I don't really see the distension in the abs that sometimes he has. But yeah, without seeing the back and the lower body, it's kind of hard to give a really good judgment on what kind of shape he's in at 3 weeks out. I mean, my first impression looking at these was he looked a little bit more like streamlined, a little bit more downsized in some of these updates, but I could be wrong. It could just be the angle. Maybe he's taking that Nick Walker approach, coming in a little bit less full, a little bit less size, but tighter. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the last show that we saw Sergio compete in was the Legion show that Sean Clarita won, which I guess at this point would have been almost 2 years ago. Yeah, no, maybe a year and a half. But in any case, I really hope Sergio's able to overcome this stuff. I want to see him come back. I want to see him happy. I want to see him healthy mentally and physically. And I want to see him, come back and get some redemption here. I know he wasn't happy with his last placings, but I want to see him be able to come back and kind of earn a placing that is more acceptable to himself. All right, so next up in the news, Roelly Winklaar recently did a podcast with William Bonac, and there was an interesting thing specifically that was said in this podcast. The name of the podcast, and I believe it is William Bonac's actual podcast, was Guy Nyame podcast. Hopefully I'm not butchering the pronunciation of that, but Roelly and Bonac were talking about Roelly's career, his future in the sport, and one thing specifically that Roelly says, he talks about politics and bodybuilding. He said, I think a lot of the politics in bodybuilding affected my placings. That's the thing. They did it a lot with me. What I did is I still laughed. What can you do? You can't do nothing. If you're angry, your placing would be worse. And Bonac says that's true. And what he's talking about there is athletes that got upset on stage with their placing, showed some kind of disdain with how they were placed, would end up receiving worse scores in future shows. So he's implying that because he's acted upset on stage about placings before, that is the political agenda against him, causing his placings to continually get lower. Now, we haven't seen him compete since the 2021 Romania Pro, where he actually took 9th. So ever since 2018, when Roelly won that Arnold Classic Australia, and that was a big redemption moment for him. He also won the Prague Pro that year shortly after with a top 3 Olympia placing. I think 2018 was Roelly's best look. And after 18, his placing seemed to get worse. At the 2019 Arnold Classic, he was 5th. At the 2019 Olympia, his placing dropped to 5th. Then he won the Yamamoto Pro in 19, but then he didn't come back until 2021, where he was earning placings like 5th in Chicago, 2nd at the Europa, 11th out at the Olympia, so he's outside of the top 10, 2nd at the Yamamoto Pro, which he had won before, Prague Pro 5th, which he had won before, then his final show, that Romania Muscle Fest Pro, 9th in 2021. So up until the end of his career, his placings were kind of a crescendo of progressively getting worse. And to be completely honest, I'm not sure what specific show Roelly's talking about where he may have acted upset on stage that contributed to his placings getting lower, but it must have been sometime around that 2019 era. Maybe the Olympia, maybe a big stage was a stage that he did it, because that's where his placings first started to take a shift from 2018, where again I think was kind of the peak of his physique. I really like the 2018 version of Roelly. But I think this opens up a larger conversation, because right now after the Arnold Classic, there's a lot of conversation about politics. There's a lot of conversation about the judging. Do you think that politics exist in bodybuilding? I think they certainly do, but to the extent that they exist, I think is the bigger question. Are we really seeing bodybuilders get placed 2, 3, 4, 5 placings lower because of politics, or might it be just a slight bias, a tiny bias in the judging based on something that a bodybuilder did that might not affect the placings dramatically? So look, I do believe there's some corruption bias in politics and bodybuilding. I mean, that's undeniable. There has been since the inception of bodybuilding. There have been legitimate scandals and controversies when it comes to Olympia placings and bodybuilding shows in general. There have been legitimate scandals. So that's where this whole idea of politics comes from. It comes from a real place. It's not something that bodybuilders or fans just invented. But do I think Roelly Winklaar was a victim of it to the point that that's why he received the placings he received towards the end of his career? I really don't. I mean, you can look at Roelly and tell he was just not the same bodybuilder towards the end as he was when he was really crushing it. His physique was not the same. Like, take the Olympia, for example. I still think what happened with Ramy was sketchy. It seemed weird. It seemed like they did him wrong at the Olympia. I don't think they gave him a fair shake. Now, whatever the reason for that is, I don't know. Was it really that he just looked that bad that he couldn't ever be compared for the top spot, even though he was a returning defending champion? I kind of doubt that. I do think there was maybe another reason at play for him to have been that far out of the conversation immediately after walking on stage. But do I believe that the reason for that is because he skipped Jim Mannion's Pittsburgh Pro guest posing? No. I just don't think that's a believable or realistic conspiracy theory, and you don't have to look much further than the winner of the 2022 Mr. Olympia. Hadi Chupin won. And if you think about a political decision, every political factor you can think of is working against Hadi Chupin. If you think that they want a good ambassador to win the show to promote business, Hadi Chupin doesn't even speak English or barely speaks English. He has a hearing impediment, which causes him to also have a slight speech impediment. When he does post on social media, it's rarely ever in English. And the IFBB is an English-speaking company primarily. They're an American-based company. Most of their biggest shows and titles are held in America, sold to American fans. That's their biggest customer base, I would say. Their fan base is definitely international. I wouldn't say their fan base is largely American, but I think their biggest customer base, as far as pay-per-views, ticket sales, going to shows, competitors, it's definitely the NPC and the IFBB here in the States that is their biggest customer base. And if you talk about real politics, like U.S.-Iran tensions, that's another reason to not, politically want an Iranian to have the title, but they ignored all those politics and gave Hadi Chupin the title because he was deserving. He was the best bodybuilder on that day. Crazy conditioning. He's had it for years. He deserved that Olympia title, and Hadi Chupin winning that Olympia title is the reason why I believe politics, if they exist at all, still to this day, are extremely, extremely small. Because if you were going to use politics to influence placings, to better serve the brand, to better serve the Olympia, to better serve the IFBB, if that's what you were doing, you would not pick Hadi Chupin to win. Think about it. It's a really fair point. If you're going to use politics to influence placings, aka basically pick who you want to win based on what's best for the Manions or what's best for business, there would be zero reason to pick Hottie. They only picked him because he was the best bodybuilder, and that restored my faith in the judging. And look, I know that was a very long-winded way to approach this story, but back to the original point, you've got Roelly Winklaar addressing politics. You've got all this stuff about the Arnold Classic, the controversy, the judging, politics with Rami at the Olympia and the Arnold. Dennis James was just talking about it too. So again, the question to you guys is, do you think politics exist? Even though I think the answer is yes. And the real question is, to what extent do they exist? That's my question to you guys, because I do think they exist. And I do think they may have a minor impact on placings. But I think the days of picking a winner to best suit the business, if they were ever those days are over. But maybe you guys feel that maybe they'll punish a guy with a placing him lower. Maybe that's the extent that it exists. I want to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. But as far as the Nick Walker versus Samson Dauda thing, it's still a huge controversy. It's still a huge talking point. But really, honestly, guys, I think the only reason it's such a big talking point, and it's on every bodybuilding podcast, every bodybuilding channel is still talking about Nick Walker, Samson Dauda, it's just because there's nothing else to talk about right now. There's nothing going on in bodybuilding. It's a very kind of boring period after the Arnold. It always is. So really all there is to talk about is the Arnold results. And luckily for the people talking about it, there was kind of a controversy there. So I think obviously it was close between Nick and Samson, but I don't think it was a huge controversy. It could have gone either way. At the end of the day, I think it was close. I think Nick Walker fans, they're doing what they should do. They should be upset that their favorite guy didn't win. That's what a bodybuilding fan should feel. They're absolutely right. But I really don't get the outrage that Samson won. Look, I think you could have made an argument for both Nick and Andrew winning. But I think also, clearly, there was a strong argument for Samson winning, too. And I really don't think it was that controversial of a pick. But I'm sure I'm going to hear about that in the comment section below, too. There's going to be a lot of strong opinions about Samson and Nick. But honestly, on that, I really think it's only become such a big deal because there's nothing else to talk about. Now, next up in the news, I know this post is a couple days old, but I still want to talk about it. Larry Wheels, am I looking classic yet? Be honest. Where he's hitting a kind of variation of the crucifix pose and then a front double bicep, both of the vacuum pose. Honestly, not only showing off his ability to do a vacuum pose, but showing off he's still got a pretty impressive taper as well. And I've seen a lot of comments saying they think Larry will do poorly if he pursues classic physique. I think clearly that's what Larry is doing. To me in these updates. He looks like, I don't want to say smaller, but he does look downsized, like he's trying to get into striking distance of whatever his classic physique limit would be. He's over 6 foot. I think he's 6'1", so his limit would obviously be a lot higher than most. And I think he would actually do well in classic physique. I actually think he would do better in classic than bodybuilding if he's able to make that weight restriction. I think, from what I've heard, it is something he's serious about, pursuing classic physique. And honestly, if you look at the classic division over the last couple years, it does seem like it's the taller guys that are really starting to excel because of the way the weight caps are structured. They are allowed to weigh more, and it seems like that's leading to them looking better than the shorter guys. A lot of the short guys now are having issues making weight, and I think because of that, there's that factor that kind of screws up their last-minute prep. There's the other factor that they're just not as big as the taller guys, and taller guys have a more commanding stage presence. You saw Terrence Ruffin slip several placings this year. I think it was because of those weight restrictions. So with a taller guy like Larry Wheels, if he's serious about it and he can make that weight restriction, I think he would be better suited for classic than he would be for open. Classic seems to be turning into more of a tall man's division. I mean, Chris Bumstead, Ramon Dino, and Urs Kausinski might have been the 3 tallest guys in the Arnold lineup, and they were the top 3. Now, would Larry be able to get a pro card? That's maybe a whole other story. Do I think if he does an NPC classic physique show, he can win it? Yes. Do I think he can maybe get to a national show and have a shot at a pro card? I think he could get to a national show, become nationally qualified. He did it in bodybuilding. I think he could do it in classic physique. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about Larry Wheels' chances in classic physique. Now, the final story that I've got for you guys today. Julius Maddox bench press record will be erased. Now, what is the reason for this? So, the WRPF, there was an email sent out to WRPF members. It says, "Dear members, in response to the recent surge in memberships, The WRPF has conducted an internal evaluation of our standards and policies. The evaluation highlighted a need for an internal records-keeping system as we currently do not have one in place. And to address these gaps and maintain the integrity of fair competition, we have made the following changes. Now, the big one here is all gear checks will now be mandatory and in accordance with the newly updated equipment specifications outside in the rulebook, and this will be a part of their new record-keeping system. So to boil this down, with their record-keeping system going forward, they want these policies and procedures when it comes to breaking a record to be uniform across the book and followed by everyone that breaks a record going forward. But this also means that all world records set in the past are going to be wiped clean, and only going forward will their WRPF world records count, and this will begin on March 25th, 2023, so in 3 days. And I want to thank one of my subscribers, Chris, who actually sent me this as a video idea. He followed up with the Federation, and they responded saying, we are not importing the data from Open Powerlifting. There are several reasons for us not doing this, but fundamentally, there were a lot of errors in it. And additionally, we were not standardized in our gear checks or reporting procedures yet. So the records are starting 3/25/23 new outside of the minimums we set, and that is all supposed to go live tomorrow. So the important part about that is Julius Maddox's record of 782.6 on the bench press. That was set with WRPF. So as far as they're concerned as an organization, that record will no longer stand or be recognized by them. That's what I'm understanding here, because it wasn't set in accordance with their standardized procedures or gear checks. So let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section down below. That's going to wrap it up for the video today, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Make sure you leave a like, leave a thumbs up, subscribe for more bodybuilding and powerlifting news. And as always, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.